My previous reading was incorrect. On page 94, it says, Anastasia felt the bed. Then she saw the worms. I wish you would tell me about your secret. I've been wanting to spy, but Penny won't let me. Why won't you tell? I won't tell on you. Penny and I can keep a secret. Penny can, Henrietta said. She crossed her arms and shook back her hair. Anastasia looked hurt. I keep secrets. Who told Mom about the rat skulls in the barn? Henrietta asked. Well, I didn't mean to. Who told Becky Toller about the fort in the chestnut trees? I don't even like Becky Toller. Well, who told her then? Who told Dad about the boots we were getting him for his birthday? He forgot. He was still surprised. Who told Mom when I tried to climb the water tower? I did not tell that. You climbed the water tower? Henry asked. The tall one on the other side of town? Yeah, Dad came and got me before I could get very high because someone told. She stared at Anastasia. It wasn't me, Anastasia said. It really wasn't. I promise. Well, you told all the other times. Page 95. Not on purpose. If you tell about the water and the worms, then I promise I won't tell anyone, not even Penny. If we told you, we would tell Penny, Henrietta said. I already told you, Henry said. It came from a rain cloud. Anastasia looked at him and curled her lip. That's not very nice. Most water probably comes from a rain cloud. We might tell you soon, Henry said. I have to go dump the bucket. He scooped the towels up, carried them to the bucket, and started down the stairs. Anastasia followed him down onto the landing. Henry? She asked. Yeah. Do you think I can't keep a secret? He stopped and looked at her. I don't know. Can you? It's kind of hard, but sometimes I can. Okay. I'll tell you a secret. Don't tell anybody. Okay. I don't want to go back to Boston. Oh. She looked disappointed. What about your parents? Page 96. I hope they're okay, but I don't want to go back. They would never let me have a knife, or ride in the back of a truck, or drink soda, or play baseball without a helmet. Real baseball players wear helmets, Anastasia said. They made me take a special class when I wet the bed. You wet the bed? I used to. I won't tell anybody. Okay, Henry said, and then he went into the bathroom. Anastasia went downstairs. She didn't tell anyone. It would have been harder if Penelope had asked. I thought he was keeping a fish, she whispered to Penelope, but Henry said they weren't. That night, Henry read on the dry end of his bed until he was sure his aunt and uncle were asleep. Then he pulled down the sheet of poster and looked at his collection of doors. He got out the chisel Henrietta had brought him and began prying and scraping at the remaining plaster. Downstairs, Dottie told Frank not to worry about the scratching noise, rolled over, and went back to sleep. Henry worked much faster with the chisel, and he was getting the hang of how the old plaster broke off. He was still so heavily caffeinated from the barbecue, and not even slightly tired. The plaster in the upper corners came off quickly, and he tipped his dresser onto his bed so he could stand on its side to reach the very top of the wall where the ceiling peaked. There were no little doors that high, just a wooden panel crowning the whole wall. He climbed down off his dresser, stood it back on the floor, and tried to quietly pull his bed away from the wall to get at the bottom. Henrietta came up just as he finished moving his bed. She had waited a very long time for her sisters to fall asleep. Most of the plaster behind the bed came off quickly because the water had seeped down behind it and loosened it up. But the bottom corner still took two children a great deal of time to clear off. The plaster was thinner there, cracked easily, and came off in tiny pieces. When Henry finished and stepped back to look at the wall, the caffeine was gone and he was tired enough to fall asleep standing up. His arms and wrists were sore, and yawns came with almost no break between them. Henrietta, who had been sweeping and cleaning while Henry chipped, stopped as well and stood beside him. How many are there? She asked. Henry yawned. I don't know. A lot. They're pretty small. Henrietta started counting. Henry was too tired to count, so he just waited for her to finish. 99. she said finally. There are 99. 99 is a lot. Yeah. Henry yawned again. Should we go dump all the plaster now? Henrietta asked. Henry yawned again. He nodded. He couldn't talk. The blanket was not piled as high as it had been the last time, but it was very heavy. An exhausted Henry heaved his makeshift sack, and Henrietta followed him, picking up the pieces that he dropped. When they arrived outside, the night air roused them a bit, but not so much. Every time Henry yawned, Henrietta's jaw quaked and then opened as wide as she fought one of her own. The two of them finally made it to the irrigation ditch, watched the plaster slide down into the oily-looking night water, and sat down. I fell asleep here last time, Henry said. It was early, but the sun was up. Your dad found me. He didn't even ask what I was doing. He never does. Page 99. I'd like to sleep here again. It's much nicer than inside. You'd get cold. It's not that cold out here, Henry said. It's just nice. I've done it before, Henrietta said. Eventually you still get cold. Have you ever slept outside at night? Henry shook his head. Not even in a tent? Henry shook his head again. I slept in a sleeping bag once. Mom said I had to keep it on top of my bed, but I slept on the floor. She thought I'd fallen out of bed. He was staring at the moon's strange face. Henrietta didn't say a thing. He turned to look at her. She was asleep in the grass. Her mouth was open. Henrietta, he said. He poked her in the shoulder, and she woke up. We should go inside, or we'll both fall asleep. Okay, she muttered, and he helped her up. The two of them dragged bare feet through the beautifully damp grass, a wet and dirty blanket dragging behind them. Henry said goodbye to Henrietta at her door, climbed his stairs, and threw his blanket onto his bed where it had been wet. It was now filthy with dust that would not shake off. He didn't care. He didn't even bother to reattach his sheet of posters. Page 100. He dropped his clothes and climbed onto his bed, put his head in the corner, remembered something, reached over, turned off his light, and closed his eyes in the darkness. Henry didn't know if he'd been asleep for hours or if he'd only just gotten into bed. All he knew was that there was a light on in his room. It was supposed to be dark. What does that matter? His sleeping mind wondered. He didn't open his eyes. His bare feet squirmed around on the wet part of his sheets. Suddenly he was wide awake. The light was shining at the end of his bed, lighting his damp feet. It was coming from the post office box. Henry sat up and slid to the end of his bed, kicking his tangled bedding to the floor, holding his breath. He looked through the narrow glass panel. Inside the darkness of the box, a single postcard leaned against the left side. Beyond that, the box opened onto a yellow room glowing with light. Henry's mind, back up to normal speed, remembered the key in his pants pocket. Henry jumped off his bed and rushed through the sheet and blanket pile on the floor, hunting for his pants. When he found them, he reached for the pocket. Then he panicked. What if the key had fallen out when he fell down at first base, or when he'd fallen down at second base, or in the right field? Then his finger found the string and pulled it out. The key swung and spun in the dim light. Henry hopped back onto his bed and felt for the keyhole. He pressed the keyhole to the lock. Nope. He flipped the key around and tried again. It slid into place. He turned it, felt the latch release, and pulled open the little door. Henry was peering through the mailbox into somewhere else. The somewhere else was mostly yellow. Then Henry heard someone whistling, and a pant leg came into view not 2 feet from Henry's face.